Have you ever questioned why you constantly feel unworthy or not good enough? This unsettling query is more common than you might think. It's the echo of self-hatred, a silent struggle many grapple with, often unnoticed. This deep-seated emotion goes beyond fleeting moments of self-doubt or criticism. It's a ceaseless, corrosive wave of negativity towards oneself. Today, we dive into the depths of self-hatred and identify 5 signs that may indicate you're battling with it. Before we delve into the signs of self-hatred, we first need to understand what it is. Self-hatred is a complex, internalized emotion that often stems from past experiences or traumas. It's a deep-seated feeling that you're not worthy, not good enough, or simply not deserving of love and happiness. It is not something that just happens overnight. It's insidious, creeping up on you over time, subtly influencing your thoughts, actions, and perceptions of the world around you. Think of self-hatred as a parasite that feeds on your self-esteem and self-confidence, slowly eroding them until what's left is a distorted version of your self-image. It's an inner critic that's constantly whispering negative thoughts and doubts in your ear. You're not smart enough. You're not attractive enough. You're not successful enough. This internal narrative can be so pervasive that you start to believe it, and in doing so, you unwittingly become your own worst enemy. But how does self-hatred come to be? It can stem from a variety of sources. Childhood traumas or abusive relationships can cause a person to internalize the negative messages that they have received. Society's expectations and pressures can also contribute, causing individuals to feel inadequate if they don't meet certain standards or norms. It's a culmination of internal and external factors that lead to the formation of this toxic self-perception. Why is understanding self-hatred important? Because it's a silent assailant on mental health. It can lead to depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders. It can cause isolation, self-destructive behaviors, and even self-harm. It can prevent individuals from forming healthy relationships, pursuing their passions, or even seeing the value in their own lives. Recognizing self-hatred is the first step towards healing. It's about acknowledging that these negative perceptions about yourself are not truths, but distorted reflections formed by past experiences and false beliefs. Now that we have a better understanding of self-hatred, let's explore its signs. The first sign of self-hatred is negative self-talk. Now, what does this look like, you ask? Imagine a critical voice continually whispering in your ear, highlighting your flaws, reminding you of past mistakes, and constantly telling you that you're not good enough. That's negative self-talk. It's a destructive habit that can lead to a downward spiral of self-deprecation and low self-worth. This incessant internal dialogue may sound like, "Why can't I do anything right?" or "I'm such a failure." These harmful messages are not just fleeting thoughts. They become a part of your daily life, tainting your perception of yourself and the world around you. Negative self-talk is a deceptive beast. It can seem like a protective mechanism, preparing us for disappointment or failure. But in reality, it only serves to reinforce our insecurities and fears, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. For instance, if you continually tell yourself that you're not smart enough to excel in your career, you might not even try to apply for that promotion or take on that challenging project. You're setting yourself up for failure before you've even begun. It's important to remember that negative self-talk is not an accurate reflection of reality. It's a distorted view of oneself, fueled by self-hatred. But the good news is, it can be tamed and transformed, leading to a healthier and more positive outlook on life. If you're constantly berating yourself, it might be a sign of self-hatred. The second sign of self-hatred is isolation. This isn't about enjoying a quiet moment alone or the occasional retreat into solitude. This is about a profound and pervasive tendency to withdraw, to retreat from the world, and to disconnect from others. It's about creating barriers, both physical and emotional, that separate us from the rest of the world. Why do individuals experiencing self-hatred tend to isolate themselves? It's a form of self-protection. If they're alone, they can avoid criticism, judgment, or rejection from others. But it's a double-edged sword. While they may escape external negativity, they are left alone with their own harsh self-criticism. The solitude provides a stage for the negative self-talk to take center stage, unchallenged. And here's where the danger lies. Isolation can intensify feelings of loneliness. It's a vicious cycle. The more an individual isolates, the lonelier they feel. The lonelier they feel, the more they isolate. This cycle can perpetuate and amplify feelings of self-loathing, creating a downward spiral that can be difficult to escape. The irony is that human connection is often the antidote to self-hatred. It's through relationships that we can feel understood, accepted, and valued. It's where we can find the compassion we struggle to extend to ourselves. If you find yourself constantly seeking solitude, it could be a sign of self-hatred. Remember, recognizing the signs is the first step towards healing. The third sign of self-hatred is engaging in self-destructive behaviors. This isn't just about the obvious, like substance abuse or self-harm, though those can certainly be part of it. It extends to a myriad of actions that might seem ordinary on the surface, but are harmful in the long run. For instance, constantly overworking without taking time to rest and recharge, or consistently putting ourselves in stressful situations can be classified as self-destructive behaviors. We might justify it by saying we're just dedicated or that we thrive under pressure, but what we're really doing is wearing ourselves down, bit by bit. Then there are the emotional self-destructive behaviors. Ever find yourself sabotaging your own success or happiness because deep down, you don't believe you deserve it? That's another form of self-destruction. It's like we're our own worst enemies, setting up roadblocks in our own path. Eating habits can also be self-destructive. Regularly indulging in unhealthy foods, skipping meals, or overeating, these are all ways of harming ourselves physically. It's a form of neglect, a way of saying we're not worth the time and effort it takes to maintain good health. So, why do we engage in these behaviors? Often, it's because they provide an immediate relief or distraction from the pain we're feeling. But it's a temporary fix, and in the long run, it only serves to reinforce our negative self-image. If you're engaging in self-destructive behaviors, it may be a sign of self-hatred. The fourth sign of self-hatred is perfectionism. Now, perfectionism isn't inherently bad. It can motivate us to strive for excellence and achieve our goals. However, when it becomes an obsession, it can turn destructive and be a sign of self-hatred. Perfectionism stems from a fear of failure or making mistakes, a dread so profound that it can paralyze you. This fear often goes hand in hand with a constant feeling of not being good enough, no matter how hard you try or how much you achieve. You may find yourself setting impossibly high standards so lofty that they're unreachable. And when you inevitably fall short, you berate yourself. This self-deprecation is a form of self-hatred. Perfectionism can also manifest as a constant comparison with others. You may find yourself always looking at others and thinking, "Why can't I be as good as them?" This comparison only serves to fuel your self-hatred, as it feeds into your belief that you are not good enough. It's important to understand that everyone makes mistakes, and it's through these mistakes that we learn and grow. It's okay not to be perfect. Perfection is, after all, an illusion. If you're always striving for perfection and nothing seems good enough, it could be a sign of self-hatred. It's critical to recognize this pattern and seek help to break free from the destructive cycle of perfectionism. The fifth and final sign of self-hatred is a lack of self-care. This is not just about forgetting to moisturize or skipping the gym once in a while. We're talking about a consistent, pervasive neglect of your own well-being. Self-care is a broad term that encompasses physical, mental, and emotional health. It's about taking the time to nurture and nourish yourself, to rest and recharge. It's about setting boundaries, saying no when you need to, and prioritizing your needs. But when self-hatred creeps in, this very important aspect of life often falls by the wayside. Physically, it might manifest as a disregard for personal hygiene, healthy eating, or regular exercise. Mentally, it could mean neglecting to engage in activities that stimulate and challenge your mind. Emotionally, it may look like ignoring your feelings, suppressing your emotions, or failing to seek support when you're struggling. When you're caught in the vicious cycle of self-hatred, it's easy to convince yourself that you're not worth the effort of self-care. you might believe that you don't deserve to feel good, to be healthy, or to be happy. But remember, these are just lies your mind is telling you. It's important to recognize that lack of self-care is not just a symptom of self-hatred, but also a contributing factor. The less care you take of yourself, the worse you feel, and the more your self-hatred grows. If you're neglecting your self-care, it may be a sign of self-hatred. To recap, self-hatred is a serious issue that can manifest in various ways. It's like a shadow that lurks in the corners of our minds, subtly influencing our actions and thoughts. Firstly, we discussed negative self-talk, the inner critic that constantly belittles and undermines us, planting seeds of doubt and insecurity. Then we delved into isolation, the tendency to withdraw from others, creating a fortress of solitude that ultimately leads to loneliness and despair. We also explored self-destructive behaviors, the dangerous actions or habits that might offer temporary relief but cause long-term harm. Next, we touched on perfectionism, an unattainable quest for flawlessness that leaves us constantly dissatisfied and restless. Lastly, we examined lack of self-care, where we neglect our own physical, emotional, and mental well-being, often prioritizing others or external achievements over our own health. These signs are not exhaustive and they don't define you. They're simply indicators that something needs attention. Remember, recognizing these signs is the first step towards healing and self-love.